Hello, I'm Professor Margaret Rogers Van Coops, and I thought today I'd like to talk to you about the soul structure coding that each one of us comes into this life. What I'm actually looking at is a coding that you make in the spirit world long before you actually come into embodiment, and that coding gives you a journey in this world. It also gives you a great deal of insights into your abilities, your skills, your talents, your inspiration. It also includes the aspects of your inheritance of your DNA and your RNA. It's quite an involved reading. It takes about 2 hours to do the whole thing thoroughly. I've had people say to me it's like having 2 years counseling and therapy in one 2-hour session. And of course, when it's given to you, it will give you a lot of explanations as to why you are the way you are. So I thought I'd go over the parts of the soul structure coding here and give you some insight into what it's all about. Now, I will say here that as far as I know, there are not many people who actually can read and download the soul structure coding. And I'm happy to say that I'll be able to do yours for you. So I'm able to tap into the Akashic records, listen to my spirit guides, and explain it all to you. It's recorded and put on an email, put in an email and sent to you so that you can study it in detail over time. So let's begin. Let's talk about what it's all about. The first thing to understand is that when you come into embodiment, you are actually encoded with the archetype that you were created in during that period of time in history. So you can understand you've had many past lives, many times of involvement on earth where you've learned a great deal. So of course when you come into embodiment, you don't need to know all your past lives. All you need to know is your skills and talents that you have inherited from your family down through the ages, through your DNA and your RNA, and also your upbringing as you've journeyed throughout this life. So the archetype is something that never changes. There are 7 types. We have the sage, we have the artisan, we have the priest, we have the scholar, we have the warrior, we have the king, and what else is it? I missed one. Hang on. And the other one that I haven't mentioned is the slave. Okay, so each one of these has a negative and a positive connotation. And the thing about your archetype is that it's unique to you for all time. It is the coding of when you were created by God, as it were, and that's very important to you throughout all your lives. When you come into embodiment under your archetype with no mask, it means that you can be clearly seen acting out, for example, the scholar or acting out the warrior. I happen to be a warrior. Now, one might think that the warrior is someone who basically goes to war. Well, it's not that at all. The warrior is able to stand in the face of God and do what God bids. So in other words, your inspiration leads you as a warrior to cut a pathway which will bring insights and inspirations into the world through the things that you do. If you are, for example, someone who actually likes to go out and about and travel the world, you might think, oh, I'm a warrior, and you might be right. But a sage could just as easily do that. So the sage likes to have expression and tell everything that they're doing, and they come through the heart chakra for that, because they want to be able to understand themselves as well as other people. And sometimes the sage can forget that they are a sage and start yelling at you more like an orator, saying this is what you need to do, you should be doing this, and you're not. And of course sometimes the sage can get out of balance and control without controlling their expressions or their understandings of self, and so they end up ranting and raving, complaining, moaning and groaning. On the positive side, the sage can express themselves fully through creativity and can talk very well about what they're experiencing in detail. The artisan actually is in the mirror image of the creator, and so has the ability to be an inventor in a way. Creation can come through the arts, music and things like that, but it can also come through science and math. So those people often have a very unique way of finding whatever it is they are interested in and sharing that with the world, which helps us to create a better world to live in. But if the artisan gets negative, then they can be very superficial. They can artifice everything in terms of this is the way I see it, this is the way it is, and I'm not going to adapt to any new information. So an artisan can get stuck in a rut. The priest is full of compassion. I know how you're thinking, I know what you're feeling, and because of that I can be full of compassion for you and help you to understand your issues and your problems and sort them out. But if the priest is out of balance themselves, then they can be full of zeal and zest about something and it's the big thing of the day, but it'll wear off, and given time, confusion can arise with the priest who is overzealous about what they know, to the point where they block anyone else out, so they can become negative and restrict people's abilities. I.e., if we take a priest really as a member of a church, they could be telling you hell, doom and gloom in the zeal type and not have any real compassion for your suffering. On the other side of the fence, a priest can literally give you an understanding of how you feel and how you think. So a priest doesn't have to be physically a man of cloth or a woman of cloth. You could be anything. You could be a teacher, you could be a mechanic. I want to make it clear, a priest is not necessarily a priest. The slave likes to serve, and in serving, for example, if you're a cook, you love to cook your meals, and given time, what you want to do is dish up all that food for everybody else, and you might be standing at the back of the line waiting on your turn, and that's sacrifice in a way. The slave loves to be in bondage. Well, I like cooking, I like doing this, but hey, I'm slaving away at the stove for another 10 hours in preparation beforehand so I can do this work. Well, obviously a slave isn't always a cook. There could be 101 ways that a slave could serve mankind, and if they're angry and frustrated and blaming and shaming people because they feel trapped and abused and misused, you have it then. A slave is really the martyr, suffering all the time. The king learns to be a master. They sit on their throne, they give orders, they tell people what to do because they know what should be done. But if they're bossy and aggressive and tyrannical in many ways, they're negative. They're then blaming and shaming you because you failed in your work and you should be a better person for them, and they will try and change you to follow their mastery and do the things the way they want you to do them. Now, if the king is aware and giving, then there's going to be a lot of insights, wonderful information that they'll share and teach you to be a master yourself. But watch out for the times when they blame and shame you because you're not learning quick enough. The warrior, the thing that I am, you have persuasion. Persuasion is like, okay, if you're going downhill with some issue, I'll be there for you to help you see what is going wrong, and I'll give you that information in some way that helps your mind and emotions and body to harmonize your existence in such a way that you feel you have a purpose. Persuasion is saying you can get more, and the warrior is very good at saying you can get more, and I think I'm pretty good at that. On the other side of the fence, the negative side is coercion. If you meet a warrior who's telling you, you really need to come on this journey with me and explore with me because I know better than you and I'm your teacher, and you need to do this or else, the coercion can get a bit nasty in that they're pushing you to do something you don't want to do, that you don't feel ready to do it. So if you're in the hands of a rogue warrior who's saying, follow me, and if you don't, I'll disown you, I'll walk away, I will leave you without any help, that's a threat. And that is also a form of coercion, so watch out for that one. I have to admit that when I was a younger woman, married with a husband who was a drunk, I would often step into coercion, saying things like, if you cut back on your drinking, I'll do something for you that will make life easier. And I learned the hard way that you can't change an alcoholic by coercion. And with persuasion, I was able to get a little change, but not too much. So sometimes the warrior gets frustrated. But their journey is a lonely one. They go on their own pathway and hopefully can draw people into their pathway to learn, and then lets them go, because their journey must be to move on. The scholar is knowledgeable. Why? Because they observe, they watch people, they see what they're doing, they absorb vicariously the emotions and mindsets of others, and in this way they are like a storybook. They remember things. While you may have said something ages ago and forgotten it, they haven't. They're going to throw it back at you. Well, if it's knowledge that's helpful, then they can be great counselors, great advisors, even psychologists and healers. But if they're stuck in the theory of how things work, then they often drown you in information. So you want to be careful that you're not sitting with someone who's a scholar who's going to go on and on for hours and hours about all the theory of what you should be and could be and ought to be, really not trying to help you gain knowledge, but rather trying to get you to understand the theory. Well, as we all know, theory in practice sounds like it's going to work, but in reality it often doesn't. And as a result of that, what we end up doing is getting mixed up and crazy. Now, the thing about the archetypes is that as we evolve and we ascend in vibration and we become more knowledgeable, more full of wisdom, that we eventually can borrow the masks of some of the others. Me, for example, because I'm a very ancient being, I'm the warrior, as I said, in terms of all times. I'll always be a warrior, but I can wear the mask of the artisan, and I can draw and paint and sing and dance and have fun doing that. And yes, I do workshops where I get the people doing that with me. And so here's an example where the warrior is becoming the artisan. Another aspect that I use, obviously, because I'm a counselor and a healer, is the priest. I have a great deal of compassion for people suffering, and I certainly do use zeal for them sometimes to get them to be motivated to want to clean up their issues and move on. But usually it's just gently used. I'm much more in the compassion, positive side of the priest. Now and again I'll use a scholar because I have a lot of knowledge that Spirit has given me, and I use that with Spirit to bring news and information to you to help you. For example, in the soul structure coding, I'm able, as a medium, to bring that knowledge into my consciousness to help you. If I have to talk about theory here in terms of the artisans and the warrior, slave, and so on, all the different ones, then I'll be giving you some theory, but I'll take it into the knowledge and wisdom of you, so that you can understand yourself and what makes you tick. So when I'm doing this soul structure coding, I'm actually really using a great deal of the scholar during that time. Now, the second part of the soul structure coding is you come into embodiment with a goal. That goal will be according to something you A, want to learn, and B, want to teach other people. I'm going to read you what those are. I've got them written down here, so I'm looking down. I've got acceptance and rejection. So you can see they're opposite one another, and those come through your heart chakra again. I have a feeling what you're saying is right. It just bounces into my heart, my body, and says, wow. Or I'm absolutely rejecting it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. It doesn't help me. The negative side of acceptance is getting into a state of ingratiation. You don't appreciate what you've got around you. You complain about it all the time. So you can see you're not really fighting acceptance. You're not going with the flow. If you are accepting acceptance, then you have agape or joy. It means that everything's going your way and you feel wonderful. Now, if we go down to rejection, what we have in the negative is the determination to try and find answers, even though you're in rejection all the time. Determination gives you the energy to push forward, to ask questions of yourself. Why am I screwing up? Why am I getting things wrong? Why do people reject me, for example? Or why do I reject other people? It's a question mark. And when you start to ask those things, if you find it's too easy for you in that you're having to adapt and change your point of view, then you may well go into prejudice, just to be negative and say, I'm against that. Because if I go into it, I know I'll have to change. And if I have to change, I know that that's a big lesson. I'm scared of it. I don't want to do it. So I'll put up excuses in the form of prejudice and I'll run away from it. But obviously, if a person in rejection meets a person in acceptance, then there's going to be some kind of conversation that will either end up with the rejection person winning, pushing the acceptance person away, or the acceptance person entwining with the rejection person to help them understand how they can make that simple change that helps them to move on to have a better quality of life. Why would a person have a goal of rejection? Well, it makes them stronger. It makes them want to do more in the world that they're living in. A person would have acceptance because they're wanting to share who they are and embrace the oneness. If a person comes into embodiment with a goal of growth or retardation, then what we have is the mind here taking control. With growth, we ask questions and we learn and we understand, and we call that comprehension. If we are not getting it, if we don't see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together in our life, then we get into confusion. It's very much a state of mind. When you have 4 members of your family all throwing different points of view at you, it's very easy to become confused if you don't see their points of view. So listening well is very important with a goal of growth, and asking questions is very important for a goal of growth. And even if you get the truth, it doesn't always mean you're going to accept it right away. It could be years later that things you've heard today make sense. So if you don't want to be confused, ask a lot of questions. If you don't want to be negative, stop talking and listen. Retardation is about coming into embodiment with atavism. Now, what we mean by atavism is that you're not pulling your weight because something anatomically may be wrong with you. For example, your brain may not be working very well, or it might be that you have such a negative attitude about the world that you pull away from it. Retardation can be about withdrawing. You don't want to be present. So one of the examples would be Parkinson's disease, which I had in my 30s, very young for that to have, but I was withdrawing from the world because I felt through my psychic ability that I was a billion spiritual energies of people that I'd met, counseled and healed. I'd let myself connect with all of them, and so I was not just Margaret. I was me and hundreds of other people, well, thousands really. And so I needed to use retardation at the time and go into atavism. I wore it as a mask to withdraw and became like, I'm sitting like this, poor me. And really realized that I had a death wish. I wanted to die. Now, I didn't do anything to kill me, but I was given some pills by my doctor that were heroin derivatives, and he didn't tell me, and I was shaking all the time. So when the shakes wore off, I thought it was the Parkinson's disease needed a little bit more of the medicine, and was not looking at the fact that I was withdrawing from the world. And so clinically I died, but I came back and here I am. But I was like reborn. I wasn't withdrawn anymore. I wasn't hiding anymore, and I certainly wasn't in atavism. I can't even say it. Atavism. So I turned my back on that and went back into my acceptance that I had actually gone through an experience of death for a purpose, which was to teach me the sorrow and sadness of the world, which I learned through all of that, and to understand more about the peoples of the world. And so, yes, my soul coding has acceptance in this life. And I have worked with the downtrodden and the rich. I have worked with kings and queens, and I have worked with people who are unknown. So what acceptance does is it allows me to be with whoever I'm with to help them. And what retardation did for me when I borrowed it was to teach me that I could understand the hearts and minds of anyone, and I can. The second two, growth and retardation, are actually, there's quite a lot of people with that at this time, because we're in a battle between evolving into a new age and the letting go of the Piscean age. And when you think about the Piscean age, was nothing but war and anger and frustrations in 1,001 ways, you can see why retardation is necessary for many people to be born with that, to say, I am not going to do what we did in the Piscean age. I'm going to sit back and complain and moan and groan about how things are, and hopefully stimulate some other people who are in growth to go out and make a better world for me to live in. And then the people who are like me, acceptance and rejection, they're the judges, if you like, at the time. This is a good idea, this is a bad idea. So together these four work to build a better world for us to live in. Now the next two are dominance and submission. We all need a leader, and dominance gives us leadership. So when we think about ministers in our states, or if we think about political people in our governments at various levels of it, these are people who have a goal of dominance because they need to be able to stand out in the crowd and tell what they know and try and work for the betterment of all of us, not just themselves, everyone, to create a better country, a better life pattern, better health, and so on. We could give a long list there. And so they'll stand up and talk very easily in front of people And leadership is something that is inbuilt in them through having a goal in their life, in their soul coding. Now, if they're in the negative, they're going to go into dictatorship. My way is the way. I know right. You have to follow me. Now, they may be right sometimes, but maybe the world isn't ready for what they're saying, so they get pushed out. But ultimately, the two sides of the dominance, leadership and dictatorship, battle between one another and battle between us all on earth, where we're trying to decide whether someone is a true leader or is actually someone who's a dictator. And we've seen a lot of that over the last 4.5 years while Trump was in position. And what we saw and understood was that he clearly revealed his leadership and his dictatorship. So yes, he was using dominance. But we also saw coming through him sometimes, occasionally, submission. And he could borrow that if he wanted to. Now, submission gives us devotion to the people. And as you know, he did like to praise those who were his followers. So there was his devotion. He was borrowing submission in order to appear a little bit more meek and humble. Now, he didn't tap into the negative side of it, which is subservience. In other words, I'll serve you, I'll do whatever you need to do. He may have talked about what he was going to do for us all, but of course many of the things he talked about never happened. Partly because there are other dominant people in government, and partly because of his personality and character. So you can see here that the physical body is controlled by dominance and submission. It's all about now. It's all about what's going on now. And these people who stand up and talk on our behalf are in their own way assuming they're leaders and that people will follow. And what they find out is they don't. But behind them are helpers who do have the goal of growth and retardation, who are their monitors, who watch these daily people who stand and do the leadership for us and guard them against overstepping the mark or protecting them and helping them to do the job that they came to do. So submission can take us into being devoted to a cause, a situation that is good for everyone, but it could also take us into submission in working for a company where we're trading hours and not getting much out of it, but we're learning, we're becoming something more. So there is some positive in that. But if it's on the negative, where we're subservient, then we become manipulated by the people who are dominantly leading the roost, as it were, doing what we're told. And in time we can become emotionally depressed and physically ill. When we're in the negative of the inspirations that come through growth and retardation through the mind, we can become mentally disturbed, mentally egotistical in the negative, and nobody likes those two negative scenarios. So if those kind of people are leading the world with people who are dominant or submissive, you can see how they can easily get control of a country and rule the roost. But what do they achieve? Do they achieve anything? Perhaps not. But in the overview they do. They achieve a breakdown of the system in the way it was and the birth of new ways. Now, the last goal stands on its own. It's stagnation. And stagnation is not moving, obviously. You're standing still, you're suspended, waiting. And there are a lot of us doing that right now. We're complaining we're in jobs that don't work for us. We're complaining that we can't afford to pay our mortgages and things like that because we don't have enough money, and we're waiting for that government check so we can get by for a while. and we hope that the politicians will improve everything around the world so that we all start to talk to one another and so on. But we're not actually doing anything. We're just a number in the game of life. But every little time we open our mouth, we say something about, I'm not having, for example, the virus, or I'm not going to go to work today because I feel sick. And in some way, your absence, believe it or not, is stagnation, but it leaves a mark on those who realize you're missing. So it's positive. It's a positive stroke there that a person gives when they're not moving forward. People realize you're left behind. People will come and try and pull you forward to get you out of the stagnation and move you on. So you become a stimulant, believe it or not, the opposite of being stagnant. If you are not well or born deformed or have something that doesn't work for you, you go into acute depression and you become inertia. In other words, nothing's going on around you. You're not even going out the front door to drive your car. You're depressed, you're miserable, and nobody wants to talk to you, so you think. But in reality, you are yet again a marker to the state of mind and heart in individuals. People need to be reminded that there are a number of people all around the world who are depressed. And right now, metaphysical teachings are opening that door to help those people with hypnosis, counseling, and much more. So now you have two aspects of the soul structure coding. Now, when I'm doing a reading with this, I'm going into details about your family, your ancestors, your grandparents, any part that is needed to help you understand yourself and your soul structure coding and why you're here. To make the point clear, Spirit asked me to write the book, Donald Trump, The Enigma of Society. I didn't want to write it. I'm not politically oriented in any way, shape or form, but they assured me this was not about Donald Trump, the gosh, I can't even think of the word because he's not there anymore. The president. I'm still in his vibration when I think about him writing that book. What you realize when you read that book, Donald Trump, The Enigma of Society, is that his life was set up for him long before he was ever even born by his great-great-grandparents. And so when you read that book, you'll see the soul structure explained through his ancestors and through his life and through his political career. And I hope that by reading that book you'll understand how the soul structure works. But if you don't, I'm open to questions, and we always do classes and courses and teach bits and pieces about it. So you can always contact me at drmargaretrvc@gmail.com. Leave me a question. My question is in the top of the where it says who you are and what you're calling me or talking to me about. Then I'll know, and I'll have my girl let me know, and I'll answer it for you. If you don't want to do that, you can contact me on easypeasysolutions.org. Now, let's go on to the third part of the soul structure coding. This part is the modes, and the modes come into your emotions again, your mind, your body, and yes, your spirit. The modes are there to give you a personality. It's a little bit more complicated now, so I'm not going to give too much detail. But basically, while you're in the spirit world, you choose 3 aspects of the modes, and those will stick with you throughout your life. So here we are. We have in the vibration of heart, power and caution. So these people are led by their heart, a feeling. I have the feeling that I know a lot because I've been to university, I've studied a great deal, and I've got my diplomas to prove it. So I am an authority figure And once I know this, I'm going to go out and tell everything I know to anyone who wants to listen to me. But what we have to watch is the negative side of power, where it oppresses people. Hey, you have to listen to me. I have all the answers, and I'll sort your problem out, and we'll do it this way and that way. And the person receiving all that input is going, it doesn't work for me. I don't think the way you think. I don't feel the way you feel. Sorry, and walk away. And that can leave the person that has mode in the personality feeling very let down. Now, on the pair of that, on the other side, is caution. Caution, obviously, is there encoded within your soul vibration for protection from violence, from doing something silly like driving your car over the edge of a cliff, to realizing that you want to live and you want to be a happy person. But caution is very much of the mind, in that it's deliberating constantly, whether something's right or wrong. And these people, in a sense, are judges. They have opinions that are very strong, and they often invade people's spaces by forcing their opinions on other people. Now, that might sound negative, but when we hear someone else's point of view, whether we like it or not, it leaves a mark, and that causes us to move on with new ideas. So they're inspirators in many ways by being cautious. When they're sharing what they know, and they're saying, well, it could be this, and it might be that, and it might be negative, and so on, it's a warning. They're helping you in some way to not rush in with false fear to tread. The negative side of caution is phobia. And there are many people, for example me, I saw the movie Shark and Jaws, that's it, Jaws. I can remember the name, it's so long ago. And I'm telling you that when that thing suddenly appeared 3/4 of the movie way through, I literally jumped on my friend's lap. I freaked her out more than the shark. I was so drawn into it. And I want you to understand that phobias are in the heart chakra. And when you identify, as I did with the shark and what it could do to me, there was no holding me back. I was going to explode emotionally with fear. And I did. And I was only young, of course, when I saw that. But what I want you to understand is that when you have caution, you could over-talk it to yourself and end up being very fearful and very alone. Because people get fed up dealing with someone that's got 101 phobias. And if we take it to extremes, for example, fear of germs, you might never get out the front door. So if you have a phobia, I really earnestly say to you, contact me for hypnosis, because I have some free ones I can give you that'll get you in a better state of mind. The second two come through the mind, and these are passion and repression. Now, you can probably see the power and caution of the mind, but it comes through the heart. Now we're talking about passion and repression. That is a mind thing that actually comes through the heart first and comes up into the mind. Get it the right way round. So your heart power and caution comes through the heart to your mind. The inspiration of passion and repression comes from your mind down into the heart. I get it right. I know if I said it right the first time. So when we're having passion about something, we self-actualize. We go, oh, I really feel about this. I'm on the way. I'm doing it. Okay? But as we do it, we start to realize things can go wrong. And so passion allows us to identify the things that we're not so good at, or the things that other people are doing that don't really help us. So it comes again from the mind into the heart. So I want you to understand you're feeling this. If you're in repression, then you hold yourself back in restraint. It's like, I really want to go out and do all those things that my mind is thinking about, but I'm not sure in my heart if I have the strength of will, or the determination to see it through. What if I make myself look a fool in front of everyone? I better hold back and watch and suss out what other people are doing. And when I think that I fit in, then I'll go forward. Now, if we're very negative in repression, then we become inhibited. We tell ourselves over and over again in the mind that our heart's not strong enough to cope with the pressures of the world, so better to just pretend we can't do anything and just become a yes person, or even more so in time, become so inhibited we become a no person. Now, if we go down into the body, action, then we talk about aggression and perseverance. Aggression is about saying, I'm enthusiastic for this, and I know it's the only way, and so I'm pioneering myself to move forward as a bodily example of activities that I'm doing. Now let's make it something simple like yoga. So you go to a yoga class, you get into it, you like to do it, and you get so into it that you get aggressive about it. You're telling everyone, this is the only therapy that works. You have to watch out that you're not too dynamic with it. Dynamicism can be contagious until it leads people down the wrong pathway. So what happens if you taught 24 people to do your yoga class and half of them drop away after a while, and even more even later still? They're seeing you as too aggressive about the way you teach. Okay? Now, if they're belligerent, they come up to you and say, I want my money back because I don't get your class. You're not really gentle and soft, you're tender. You're saying, okay, leg up, leg down, like we're in an army. Then they're angry with you. That could be a part of repression. And if you start replying with, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm the teacher. I've studied for years. You're being belligerent. Okay? And that can push people away even more. So you need to be aware of your aggressive mode. But aggression, on the other hand, if it's the one that you're really using, will interact with the others. Perseverance. Perseverance is I never give up. But hey, if you're persistent to the point of annoying, then you're going to push people against you. But if you're persistent in that you're slowly walking along your pathway, you know what you're doing, people join you, help you, and walk beside you and work beside you, then you can be something that's contagious because people want to learn from you. And in your persistence to never give up, they take a leaf out of your book and become your followers. But if you're in the negative side, my way is the way, and you have to do my classes, and you have to this, and you have to that, rules and regulations, you're dishing them out, then you're immutable because you're set in routine, and routine doesn't have any room for new learning. So you have to watch with repression that you do not deny yourself your own learning in the body, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. So repression in its own way is a lesson on its own. But when you come up against people who are carrying that mode of repression to use it in their life, they are often people who will pull you up in a start mode from where you've been to a stop mode to say, question mark, why am I doing these things I'm doing? So people who carry a repression mode are actually helpful to those who are running wild. Now, if we go down into assimilation, which is observation here in the modes, what that allows you to do is to get clarity in a positive way by watching others. But if you sit on the fence for too long watching others, you'll never get off the fence and do something yourself. So it's very important that when you have clarity about yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, because remember this is assimilation, then you're going to have more an idea of your direction and the things that you want to do. Now, if you're in surveillance, which is the negative side, you're in judgment here. I see you doing ABC and it's wrong for you. I have to make you understand XYZ is available because I know I've got clarity, I've walked the pathway. Here I'm your teacher, or here I'm your moderator, or here I'm the one who's come to just take you out of misery and pain and put you into a different scenario. Then they will survey you. They will see all your bad points, your negativity, and they'll be able to point them out to you. But if they dominate you with too much negativity, you will rise up and you will say, I don't want to be with you. You're not a good teacher. However, for the individual who carries the observation mode and they're full of clarity and they're teachers or coaches or teaching someone how to put electronics together, and the list goes on what they could be doing, then they will be surveying you as their helper, advisor, and they will be looking for your faults, mistakes. Now, if you're actually using observation yourself, you will do that. You will see the faults of other people, but do you see the faults in yourself? The mirror image. So actually observation teaches you the mirror image to see you in other people, both good and bad. Now the good thing about having the modes is you must have one of each. So I'm going to show you mine at the moment. I have power, passion, and perseverance. So if I put that together, I was born in a time when metaphysics wasn't known. Only psychics were known, and they were called witches, and from prior history, weirdos. Nobody really believed in psychics, okay? And so I hated the title psychic, but I had to walk under it for a few years, up until about 25, because that was the only word people knew. And so during that time, I had to come across under power as an authority figure who was an exceedingly good psychic, so that people couldn't say that what I said wasn't proof of survival of life after death. So not only would I give them the messages from their loved one, but I would give them their names, the towns they lived in, all sorts of things that would in some way confirm to the receiver that I truly was psychic, and they would go away and praise me. Nice, right? But if I was to do this, I had to put myself in the public eye, and standing in front of a bunch of people all expecting me to be a perfect deliverer of messages, I can tell you I was a nervous, shaking jelly. I was only 21, and I was doing something that people thought you had to be 60 plus in order to do it. So I was under pressure to be developing my character and my personality with my passion. So while I was passionate about giving messages, I was also very passionate about dancing, tennis, singing, whatever you could think of, I did it. I was exploring my abilities, and that's what passion gives you, the abilities. And when you discover how talented you are, you might want to go out and show and tell, and who knows, you might become a singer, a dancer, an actor. I love to be on stage, I still do, and I love to sing and dance. I'm not very good at dancing anymore because I'm old, but I can still sing a tune. But is it important? Well, it is, when I found a way to use my voice with my Trinity Stone healing to sing in a certain way, make sounds, and help people dump their negativity. And on the negative side of myself, when I was using passion, identification, I could so notice all the markers of where people were negative, and then I would tell them, you're doing this and that, and you shouldn't be doing this and that because you could be doing something better for yourself. But I wasn't seeing me in those days because I was looking outward at all the people. and I was in judgment. So I want you to understand identification can bring a great deal of judgment into your personality and character, and if you swallow too much of that negativity from the world in you, you become negative, and I did. And I have to admit that that's what led to me passing over temporarily and being brought back to life to find out that I had to deal with my own negativity. So a great deal of research went on into how I had been programmed by society to be negative. Okay? And in understanding that and coming back from death, I was able to see the positive sides of my passion and go into that and help myself delete my negative personality traits. And what did perseverance do? It helped me keep at it. I never gave up. And so with persistence, the positive side, I asked my spirit guides, teach me more, teach me more. And the more I got, the more I understood why I was here and what I was doing, and that I was a teacher, and that I would grow spiritually, and so on and so forth. And yes, I've grown tremendously since I was 35. I can see all my journey and my pathway, and I can understand that I am persistent and still will be persistent to have more information to share with all the people I teach. Now, the negative side of persistence is immutability. I'm happy to say that I'm not immutable very often, but once in a while when someone tells me I should, let's make it silly, say jump in the swimming pool and I can't swim, I'm going to say no. That's the immutable side of perseverance. However, if my passion kicks in and says, well, at least you should try, that might tell me, as indeed it did in my life, go down the deep end and go down the shallow end and learn to swim. Here my little story is, someone pushed me in the deep end of a swimming pool and I couldn't swim. So I knew I was going under many times, and suddenly I just knew I could swim. And I did doggy paddle to the side, and that was where my passion kicked in and said, well, if you've got that far from the middle of the pool to the side, you can jolly well go down the shallow end and practice that doggy paddle. And I did. And so you can see passion took over my mutability and negated it. And I've learned to do that over the years. But hey, it's still there. And if I want to use it, I could. So now I've explained to you your archetype, your goal, and your personality traits that come through your modes. On that note, I'm going to end this here and just say there are another 3 parts to it. You have your attitudes that come from your soul coding and your mother that you get in the womb. You have your centers that are encoded that give you your spiritual awareness, and there are 7 of each of those 2 that I've just mentioned, 7 attitudes and 7 centers, and I'm able to explain to you what makes you click. And psychology and psychiatry very much comes into this, and the DNA and the RNA of the things that you've learned in your life. And last but not least is the chief features, and there's 7 of those, and none of them are nice, but they're there for a reason, because they're your net that catches you when you get very negative, helps you come back online, as it were, to the true you. I'll be doing another video on those 3 parts tomorrow, so you might want to look for them and read the whole thing. Now, here's my little pitch. Over the years, I have done thousands of soul structure codings, readings for people, and in every case, and I'm not bragging here, in every case, the people have said to me, wow, this is like having 2 years of psychology sessions in one session. I can now understand who I am and why I think and act the way I do. I can see why I'm not doing A, and I'm now, with your help, can see to do it. I can see why B got in the way, and now with your help I understand I can let that go, and so on. So it's very informative. It's all recorded. In some real cases where it's really harsh, then I might even go 3 hours, because the person has a lot of issues that we need to go over. But I assure you, if you ever decide that you would like this soul structure coding done for you, then I will be happy to do it for you. The fee is $150 per hour. And as I'm separating it here, you can understand you can have part done and then have the other part done later. But given time, you'll probably want to come back and have them all explained, united, the whole reading together. So it's your choice how you want to do it. If I do the whole 2 hours, then there's no discount. It's still $300. But if I go over, you get free time. I don't charge any more than that. So that's the blessing. I can tell you that if you went to a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist for your issues, they would charge you way more than that money. Now this is a special that I will be doing. You can go to easypeasysolutions.org and write a note in there what you're interested in. Leave me your email, phone number as well, and that you want to have a soul structure coding reading, and then I will get back to you personally and we'll arrange a time, and then I will do that for you on that date and time. So for now, I want to say be well, be happy, and enjoy what you do, and know that if you decide to have this session with me, you will be so amazed how different you'll become, better for it, and more focused on your journey in this life. So blessings to you. Be well.